Have you ever been hopeless, suffering from an affliction or heartache, and had no idea what to do or a way to make it better? And then all of a sudden, a friend stepped in and intervened, striking a match that sparked a flicker of hope in you that you hadn't previously seen or felt. Have you ever been so hurt, so angry, so overwhelmed that you almost walked away from an option that could make things better for you? But someone saw you drowning in emotion, and knowing that you didn't need someone to fan the flames, they came in and brought calm to the chaos. They reminded you about the things that really mattered. Today in our Iron Sharpens Iron Bible study series, we're going to meet two kinds of friends that we need in our godly tribes. Ones who will point us to God, and ones who will provide us with a voice of reason when our emotions are pulling us from God. We find them in the most surprising places: a little servant girl and a group of brave counselors, and the life of a proud military commander named Naaman. Their faith and courage didn't just change this man's physical condition, they changed his soul. And spoiler alert, the takeaway from this lesson is going to be that we can't underestimate the impact our voice, our faith, and our courage can have on someone who's lost all hope. Grab your Bible, your pens and highlighters, and let's dive into this study in 2 Kings chapter 5 and learn some important lessons from Naaman in our Iron Sharpens Iron Bible study series. Welcome to Wellness in the Word, the place where we come together to thrive together by talking about how the Bible holds the keys to wellness in all aspects of life. If we're meeting for the first time, my name is Jill Jackson, and I would love for you to introduce yourself in the comments. Tell me what brings you here and what would help you to grow spiritually. And if you'd like to connect beyond YouTube, I'd love for you to click the link in the description to sign up for my free email newsletter, where you can get more Bible studies and spiritual encouragement delivered straight to your inbox. This is Lesson 6 in our Iron Sharpens Iron Bible study series. Let's read 2 Kings chapter 5 verse 1. Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master and in high favor, because by him the Lord had given victory to Syria. He was a mighty man of valor, but he was a leper. Underline these descriptives of Naaman: commander, a great man, high favor, a mighty man of valor. Then circle the phrase, he was a leper, and draw a line to your margin and write the problem. This was a hopeless situation, but in verse 2, we're introduced to a little girl, a captive from the land of Israel. Read verse 2 with me. Now the Syrians, on one of their raids, had carried off a little girl from the land of Israel, and she worked in the service of Naaman's wife. We don't know very much about her, but we know that she's young, and she was taken away in a Syrian raid. Maybe away from her entire family. Her world changed overnight, and now she's a servant to Naaman and his wife. We would assume that Naaman and his wife treated her kindly, given her concern for his condition. Look at how she expresses her tender compassion for his suffering in verse 3. She said to her mistress, "Would that my Lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria. He would cure him of his leprosy." Let's pick this verse apart. This little girl was troubled by his suffering. She knew who had the power to take his suffering away. And what does she do but plant a seed in her mistress's mind about God? And Naaman's wife carried that seed to her husband. The little girl pointed Naaman to God, her God, from the land of Israel from which she has been taken, almighty and all-powerful. She said of Naaman, "Would that." Some versions say, "if only," or "I wish." It's a Hebrew interjection designed to express the emotional depth, the intensity of the speaker's desires, yearnings, or heartfelt longing. She deeply desired that her Lord, her master, would go to the prophet. Now, who is a prophet? Well, it's the voice or messenger of God from the land that she's been taken from. And look again at what she says at the end of verse 3. He would cure him of his leprosy. Not he is capable, not he could, but he would. Now, what's especially remarkable about this is up to this point in time, we have no record of a prophet healing anyone from leprosy. But she has complete confidence that if he went to the prophet, he would be healed. She knew about how the prophets had performed miracles. Words of their works were widespread through Israel. And she believed in the power of God and the capabilities of his prophets. She encouraged Naaman to consider the power, the reality, and the truth of the power of God, someone he was not acquainted with. The seed of influence that she planted sprouted and took root, and Naaman went and told the king what the little girl had said. And the king told him to go now and that he would send a letter to the king with him. Read verses 6 through 8 with me. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, which read, "When this letter reaches you, know that I have sent to you Naaman my servant, that you may cure him of his leprosy." And when the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, "Am I God, to kill and make alive, that this man sends word to me to cure a man of his leprosy? Only consider and see how he is seeking a quarrel with me." But when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, he sent to the king, saying, "Why have you torn your clothes? Let him come now to me, that he may know that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman goes to Elisha with his horses and chariots and entourage, and he stands at the door of Elisha's house. Look at verse 10. And Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, "Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, underline it, and your flesh shall be restored, and you will be clean." Elisha gave him a prescription. Go wash in the Jordan 7 times. And he gave him a promise. You will be healed. This result was exactly what they were hoping for. But the prescription in Naaman's mind fell short. Look at verse 11. Underline this. But Naaman was angry and went away. His expectations weren't met. He said, "Behold, I thought that he would surely come out to me and stand and call upon the name of the Lord his God and wave his hand over the place and cure the leper." In his mind, strike one was that Elisha didn't even show his face. He sent his messenger with instructions. Naaman expected a great ceremony, to be treated perhaps with recognition as a high-ranking official in the king's army. Strike two was that he didn't like the prescription he'd been prescribed. Look at verse 12. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean? Underline it. So he turned and went away in a rage. He thought that there were better rivers for washing. He was offended, and his burning anger had him turning away to leave. He was going to give up the promise for healing that he just received because things didn't transpire the way he thought they would, and because he didn't like the prescription that he'd been given. Hope was within his grasp, and he was just going to let it go. At this point in the account, we're introduced to the other kind of friend that we need to have in our godly tribe. The kind of friend we need and the kind of friend we should strive to be is someone who provides a voice of reason. Look at verse 13. But his, circle it, servants. Just like the little girl, these servants, people who are under his authority, are going to intervene and provide some wise counsel. They came near to him and said, "My father," an expression of respect, loyalty, and affection. They said, "It is a great word that the prophet has spoken to you. Will you not do it? Has he actually said to you, wash and be clean?" I'm reading from the ESV, but I actually like the NASB better for this verse. It says, "My father, had the prophet told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then when he says to you, wash and be clean? These servants didn't have the same reaction of anger that Naaman did. They're standing there thinking, this is wonderful. They've just been told exactly what they hoped to hear, that the prophet would heal Naaman of his leprosy. Like the little girl, they had affection for him and they wanted him to be cured. They cared enough about him to challenge his emotions and reaction. They saw that his emotions were impairing good judgment and decisions, and so they step in and they provide a voice of reason. In essence, they took water and dumped it on the fire of his anger. They brought calm to the chaos. They invited him to slow his roll and think about his decisions. They said to him, if the prophet had told you to do something difficult, you would have been willing to do that. But this is a simple thing. Why wouldn't you do this? Their questions stopped him in his tracks. His anger and rage dissipated, and he realized how foolish he was being. But I want you to think about the courage this took. Naaman was their superior, the army commander, and his anger was a raging fire that he could have turned on them. Their wise counsel changed the trajectory of the outcome. Naaman listened to their reasoning, and he went and followed the prescription that he'd been given. He went to the Jordan River, he dipped 7 times into the water, and his flesh was restored like new. Now, if this account were about a bunch of women, I don't think it would read the same, because we're wired to be emotional people. I think if the leper were a woman who had just vented about having to wash in a nasty river when there were clean ones available, her friends would have been more like,
can you believe it? You can't go dip in that dirty river. Your hair's going to be filthy. What was that prophet thinking?
We're great at validating and offering sympathy and siding with the injustices of the world that our friends endure. But sometimes that type of response is not in the best interest of our friends. Sometimes what's needed is for us to be a voice of reason, someone who brings calm to the chaos, and not someone who stimulates the frenzy with hugs and consolation. If Naaman's servants had met his emotion with emotion, they wouldn't have been able to present him with reasonable, sound logic. If they hadn't gotten him to settle down, his flesh never would have been restored. He would have died a leper. Look at verse 15. Then he returned to the man of God, he and all his company, and he came and stood before him. And he said, behold, underline it, I know that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel. Naaman then offered Elisha a gift to express his gratitude, but he would not take it. Look at verse 17. Then Naaman said, if not, please let there be given to your servant 2 mule loads of earth. For from now on your servant will not offer burnt offerings or sacrifice to any god but the Lord. We're getting a glimpse into the heart of Naaman. The little girl pointed him to God, her God, the God of Israel, the one and only true God. She planted a seed in his mind about his power and convinced him that God's prophet could do what no other could. She offered him a gift, a blessing far greater than the physical healing he received. But were it not for the wise counsel and reasoning of his servants, he never would have obtained that gift. He never would have come to know God as the little girl hoped he would. He never would have experienced healing. What a tragedy it would have been to have the promise of healing and let unmet expectations and anger deprive him of life in every sense of the word. But because he listened to reason, his skin was not the only thing transformed. His heart was. So much so that he wanted to load up 2 mules with soil from the ground of Israel. He wanted to build his altar in Syria on God's holy ground. One commentator said, this act signifies Naaman's conversion and commitment to the God of Israel, acknowledging his sovereignty beyond geographical boundaries. We've seen today how a young girl and a group of servants, people who had no rank, no voice in society, and seemingly no influence, became the very voices that God used to bring hope, healing, and ultimately salvation to a powerful man. What love he must have had for that little girl and her faith in God and his power. And what indebtedness he must have felt for his servants for providing a voice of reason. Let's get practical and personal for a few minutes and talk about some key takeaways from this text. Number 1, we need friends in our godly tribes who can point us to God, who can help us to know him more, to remind us of his power. But we also need to be people who point people to God. Who in our lives doesn't know God? Whose life could you change by introducing them to God? You don't need a platform, a title, or position of influence to make an eternal impact on someone's life. This girl was young, displaced, and likely overlooked, but her faith was powerful. So ask yourself, who in your life is hurting right now? Who do you know that needs a spark of hope? Can you lovingly point them to the one who heals, not just bodies, but souls? Can you share what you know about God, even if it feels small and simple? Never underestimate what one sentence of faith spoken in love can do. Number 2, we need friends who will provide a voice of reason when our emotions are getting the best of us, to get us to slow our roll and think things through. And we need to be people who bring calm to the chaotic, emotionally charged situations, to the people in our godly tribes. Who can you bless by being a voice of reason? Naaman was angry, prideful, and ready to walk away from the promise of healing because things didn't go the way he expected them to. How often do we, or those we love, do the same? Maybe we've been praying and the answer didn't come in the form that we wanted. Or maybe someone you care about is acting out in hurt or disappointment. We've got to be friends who don't fan the flames, but instead speaks calm into the storm. Be the one who gently says, I know this feels wrong or is hard, but will you not trust in the promises of God? Sometimes the most spiritual thing we can do for a friend is to lovingly challenge their perspective. Number 3, let's ask ourselves, who are we listening to? When we are the ones struggling, angry, or heartbroken, are we surrounding ourselves with friends who speak hope over hopelessness, faith over fear, and trust over emotion? Are we willing to listen to voices of reason that might humble us? Or do we only want to hear voices that agree with us? If you're in a place today of pain or confusion, can I gently encourage you, don't walk away from what God wants for your life just because it doesn't come in the package that you expected. God used a little servant girl, a group of servants, and a muddy river not just to bring healing, but faith to a powerful man. That same God is working today. He can use you, and He wants to use you. So today, I want to challenge us to pray, number 1, that we would have courage to speak hope like that little girl. Number 2, that we would have love to speak reason like those servants. And number 3, that we would have the humility to listen, obey, and be changed like Naaman. If this lesson has encouraged you, I hope that you'll share it with a friend and subscribe to Wellness in the Word. I would love for you to join me again and study the Bible with me. And in the comments, I would love to hear which kind of friend do you most need in your life right now? And which kind of friend are you asking God to help you become? Iron sharpens iron. Let's keep sharpening one another in the Word. Next time, we're going to talk about one of my favorite women in the Bible, Abigail. I hope you'll be back to study about her with me. Until next time, stay well, stay blessed.